confusing chapter of Genesis, and maybe one of the most confusing chapters of the entire Old Testament. The first part is going to be a lot of names that you're not going to be familiar with. I will do my best to explain to you where everything is happening. And the second part is going to be one great analogy that is sometimes difficult for us to wrap our minds around because there's some phrasing in there that does not really equate with other parts of the Bible. So it's going to challenge what we know about the Bible a little bit today, and that's okay because we'll get through it together. Okay? So I hope everyone put on your thinking caps today before you came over. My friend is going to come visit for Labor Day, and he's just like kind of this weird guy. And so for a present, I'm going to buy him a hat that says thinking cap on it so that you can put it on so you can think right. So, hold on, look at that. Okay, so Genesis chapter 14. Let's say a prayer real quick so that we can hopefully understand this. All right. Dear Lord, Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. Thank you for gathering us all together. As we study your word, some things are very clear to us and some things are not so clear. We ask that you increase our faith by reading things that are sometimes difficult for us, that we can always rely on your word even when we don't understand it. All these things we ask in the Holy First name. Amen. Okay, so Genesis chapter 14. We good to go?
Yep.
Yep, okay. Good. Abram rescues Lot, which seems really great, and then you start reading it and you're like, what is going on? So, in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, Kedolaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of Goim. These kings made war with Bera, king of Sodom, Bersha, king of Gomorrah, Sinab, king of Admah, and Shemeber, king of Zeobim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar. And all of these joined forces in the valley of Siddim, that is the Salt Sea. 12 years that they had served Kedolaomer. In the 13th year they rebelled. In the 14th year, Kedolaomer and the kings who were with him came and defeated the Rephaim and Ashtaroth, Kanaim, and Zuzim in Ham, and Emim in Shaveh Kiriath-Thaim, and the Horites in the hill country of Seir as far as El Paran in the border of the wilderness. When they turned back and came to En Mishpat, that is Kadesh, and defeated the country of the Amalekites, and also the Amorites who were dwelling in Hazazon Tamar. Great. Was I accurate in my description of this chapter?
Of course.
Right? Okay. So, right, yeah. So, basically what we want to do is know what we're talking about and know where we're talking about, okay, to try to make this as easy as possible. So if you have your maps with you, we can look at them. If you don't have a map, I can make more copies, and that's okay too. So if you, I know that those were a lot of names, okay, but can you see any of the names or the cities that I read on the map? What do you see? Timor, okay. What else? Zoar and Kadesh and Gomorrah and Sodom and Zeboim, right? So basically, when we draw Israel, how do you draw Israel?
J.
Big J. Then what?
Squiggle.
Not yet, that's the third step. Circle, then squiggly line, and a bigger oval, okay? And this in the area right here is generally the borders of Israel. or right now it's called Canaan on your map. Okay? So if we were to identify the different parts of this map, because I'm a big map person, what is this sea over here? The what?
The Med.
What's the Great Sea?
The Med.
The Mediterranean Sea. Good. And then what's this body of water right here? The Sea of Galilee, which comes up a lot in the New Testament, okay? And this river,
Jordan.
the Jordan River, which comes up a lot. And then this sea down here
Dead Sea.
is the Dead Sea. There's no outlet. It's the lowest body of water on earth. Very good. It's below sea level, which why there's no place for it to go, which is why it's very salty. Okay? So the only thing that you need to know about the Dead Sea is that it's salty and it's dead because there's so much salt that there's no fish that can live in it. Okay? That's semi-basic geography. Alright? So when we talk about the Valley of Siddim, right, which is, what does Genesis chapter 14 talk about the Valley of Siddim? It's the Salt Sea, which is going to be the Dead Sea. Okay? So they're in a valley next to the Dead Sea. Okay? And in the valley next to the Dead Sea on your map, what are the different words you see?
Hebron, Zor,
You see some of those names. Okay? So basically, what we have going on is at the beginning we have the Shinar. Last week I talked about Shinar. Do you remember where Shinar is? It's all the way over here by Babylon. It's kind of like the area of Shinar. Okay? And we have Elam somewhere over here too. So basically what we have is these peoples over here did not do the thing that the kings over here wanted. So they rebelled against them. And so they came in the 14th year, and there was a battle in the valley of the Salt Sea. That's all that's saying. Okay? Is that clear as mud?
Why would they settle there? I mean, there's no sea life, and
Well, I mean, why does anybody settle anywhere? I would never live in Alabama. But, you know what I mean? Like, it's hot. Some people like hot. It's hot there. It's really hot.
yes, it is.
You know? But, like, it's not like you can't get water. There's wells and oases and that kind of stuff. So it's not like they're just living in the desert. But even the Bedouins, right? The Bedouins live in the desert, and they travel from oasis to oasis. That's just kind of the way that life was down there. So we don't necessarily think that that would be a good life for us, because we're used to having, even if you never had city water in your house, at least your grandparents had a pump that you could go out and pump the water, you know what I mean? Like, for us, it's always been readily available. For them, it wasn't as big a deal, I guess. It's not the life I'm trying to sign up for, but. Yeah, so there's mountains on this side, right here, and then there's a mountain range that goes right here, but it's not really, they're not really mountains. They're more like, they're high hills. Yeah, yeah. So,
I was thinking about if there might have like snow that might come on. Just
there are mountains in Israel that have snow on them. Mount Gerizim, Mount Carmel, like the taller mountains can get snow. Most of them don't. I mean, when it will snow, but not like
Yeah.
heaps and heaps. Not like
Like us.
Buffalo, New York or something. So, and I don't know when you say like us, because last year we had a really dry winter, right? So like, I feel like I didn't experience the real snow
Just
that y'all
wait.
can get, right?
Just
So we'll
wait.
see about this year. It's been a really wet year this year so far. So, comments, questions, concerns over that section. It's gonna be hard to ask any comments or questions because we don't really know what's going on, okay? But I'll take them if you got them. Moving right along? Yeah, okay.
Constantly fighting.
Yeah. Well, okay, so why are they fighting though? They're fighting because these are the really strong kings, right? And these kings of these like little, what we would call city-states in world history, aren't doing the thing that the stronger kings want. So they were probably paying them a tribute so that they don't get invaded, right? So they rebelled by not paying the tribute. And so then the bigger king was like, well, if you're not going to pay the tribute, I'm going to invade you. So then we have a war, basically. So did they cause it on themselves? A little bit. Are they allowed to not pay tribute? Yeah, they're autonomous. They're allowed to make their own decisions, right? This should make us sound like maybe Revolutionary War, right? We pay tribute to England because they are supposedly really much bigger and stronger than us as colonies. We don't want to pay our taxes on tea, so we throw the tea in the Boston River and the Boston Harbor, and then we have a war. It's the same thing. Okay, it's just history repeating itself. So, okay, let's go on. Yeah, we're doing okay on time. All right. So, verse 8 through 12 is a little bit more interesting, at least to me. Then the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, and the king of Admah, the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar, went out, and they joined battle in the valley of Siddim with Kedorlaomer, king of Elam, Tidal, king of Goim, Amarphel, king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Elasar, 4 kings against 5. Okay, so if you have four kings against 5, who's going to win? The 5, right? Okay. So now in the valley of Siddim was full of bitumen pits. As the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some fell into them, and the rest fled into the hill country. So what is bitumen? We covered this with the flood, if you remember. It's like a tar. So there's tar pits there. We don't like, can you name one spot where there's tar pits that you've seen? What? They have them? You've seen them? Like a pit of tar? That just seems weird to me. You know what I mean? Like we just have random tar pits that we have to watch out for. It's like when you're little, you like are always afraid that you're gonna fall into quicksand. When was the last time you ran across a quicksand pit? They're not all over the place, you know what I mean? So whenever I think of tar pits, I just think of the dinosaurs, and they're all dying in these tar pits. That's how we get the fossils. But okay, so so they fled, and some fell into them, so they died, and the rest fled into the hill country. So they're either going up here into the hills, or they're going up here into the hills. Okay, down here there are hills, but this is all desert. There's not going to be much to flee to. Okay. So the enemy took all the possessions of Sodom and Gomorrah and all of their provisions and went their way. They also took Lot, the son of Abram's brother, who was dwelling in Sodom, and his possessions, and went their way. All right, now there's a little bit more to talk about. Okay, so what is there to talk about in this section? So we have Sodom and Gomorrah, and last week we learned that Abram and Lot went their own ways because their sheep and their herds were too large. And so Abram went into the foothills of Canaan, and Lot went down into the valley by Zoar, as far as Zoar, where Sodom and Gomorrah are. Okay? So last week we had about a 10 to 15 minute discussion on whether or not Lot knew what he was doing to go to Sodom and Gomorrah to live. Did he know that those cities were very bad? Did he know what he was signing up for when he went into the river valley? Does this make our decision a little bit easier?
I think he knew what was going on there, but when he was given the choice to separate, he also saw the water, valley, feed.
So
The better,
he took the better land with the worst people.
yes.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
His wife, when they were told to leave that area, his wife turned and looked back. So would he have gone in the first place because maybe he was influenced by his wife who wanted to live in that area?
Maybe his wife told him, right? Hey, I want to live over by the river. That's not a bad thing to say, right?
Right.
Like maybe that's where she wanted to make her home. She had her kids there. She wanted to look back. She has fond memories. Poor thing gets turned into a pillar of salt. I mean, we'll get there in chapter 19 when we get there, or 17. No, 19. But yeah, I mean it's possible. I don't know. But what we have here is we have a bit of a compare and contrast. And this is what I think the most important part of this chapter is. Okay? We're going to continue to compare Abraham and Lot. Okay? So Abram lived in Canaan, in the foothills of Canaan, and Lot went to Sodom and Gomorrah. Immediately in the next chapter, there's a war with Sodom and Gomorrah. So did Lot choose well?
No.
No, he didn't. Did he know that? I don't know, but probably, it's not looking good, right? And they're under tribute for 12 years, and then they rebel in the 13th year. This is what, he's paying taxes to these kings. This is his life. And he gets taken away by this almighty king in Shinar. Okay? So, and I mean, all of their provisions, all of their possessions, the possessions of 2 entire cities they take away. So, does that make you want to live there still afterwards? No, it shouldn't, right? Maybe this is a little wake-up call for Lot. Hey, maybe this isn't a great place to live.
Do you assume that his whole family they were all taken?
Mhm.
Yeah?
Yeah. Kids and everything.
Well, if he was that wealthy that they had to split up Lot and Abraham had to split up their possessions and go separate ways, then the kings probably thought, well, he's got a lot of stuff.
He's got a lot of stuff. Let's take a lot of stuff, right? Sounds good to me. You're not paying me the tribute. You've got enough to pay the tribute. We're gonna have a little war, right? And they lost. Didn't turn out well for them. All right. So, verse 13 through 16. Then one who had escaped came and told Abram the Hebrew, who was living by the oaks of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol and of Aner. And these were allies of Abram. When Abram heard that his kinsmen had been taken captive, he led forth his trained men, born in his house, 318 of them, and went on pursuit as far as Dan. And he divided his forces against them by night, he and his servants, and defeated them and pursued them to Hobah, north of Damascus. Then he brought back all of the possessions and also brought back his kinsman Lot with all of his possessions and the women and the people. Whoa.
So he rescued you.
So he rescued him.
And his possessions.
And his possessions. He's a really good uncle. Okay?
Was everybody else sleeping? Was he able to come in and get all of that?
Sure? Sounds good to me. Alright, but what I think is the most important here is, again, the geography. Okay? So, let's try on our map to find these places. When they escaped the oaks of Mamre, is Mamre on there? Yes, Mamre is, okay? So you see that it's within the borders of Canaan and Israel, okay? And when Abram heard that his kinsmen had been taken captive, he led forth his trained men born of his house and went as far as Dan. Dan is not on there. Okay, so when you are reading your Old Testament and you are trying to figure out where things are, okay, basically I draw these little lines to show you that the borders of Israel are basically this, okay? They go a little further, but this is the way that you can keep track of it. Dan is up here, okay? And Beersheba, I think Beersheba is on your map, is the south, okay? So this is really the borders of Israel, these two cities. Beersheba is usually mentioned in the Old Testament as the southern border, and Dan is normally mentioned in the Old Testament as the northern border. Okay, so if they're fleeing into the hills, okay, they go by where Abram's living, but he pursues them as far as Dan, and even as far as Damascus, which is that's a long way.
Oh, but that's not Damascus, yeah. Where, can you tell us where we're looking for? The Sea of Galilee on the map?
Yes, it's just this really little circle.
Oh, right under Hazor?
Yep,
Right there?
that's the Sea of Galilee
Okay.
right there.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we get the Dead Sea down there, and that's the River Jordan.
This is
Like,
the Dead Sea.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep,
All right,
perfect.
you see that? No.
Anybody else need help?
That's
Yeah.
Galilee. That little tiny one right here.
Okay.
And then Dead Sea, right there. Okay.
And then everyone found Damascus, which is modern day Syria. Okay? So, this is not just this little, 20-mile walk that Abram's doing. He's pursuing them with 318 people, like a really long way in order to do this. So what does this make us feel about Abram? Well, he cares for his kinsmen. Okay, that's good. What else? Yeah, okay, good. So Abram is very competent. Or what we would say, potent, powerful. Okay? Because he went and defeated the major king, this king of Shinar. The guy that came all of this way to defeat these 5 cities. Abram took 300 men and he already defeated them. That's a really big deal. Okay? This tells us that God is with Abram. Okay? In the history books, when we get into 1 Samuel and 1 Kings, we have people that go to God and say, well, will you give these people into my hands if I go out and fight them? We don't have that with Abram. Abram just goes and he does it. He knows it's the right thing to do. He doesn't need to consult God to figure out if he's going to rescue Lot or not. God just did it for him. Okay? So that's really cool. We also have another way of saying the same thing is that Abram is active. It's when we compare and contrast Abram and Lot, Lot is passive, he doesn't do anything, he gets captured and taken away, and he is not powerful enough to save himself. So this is when we compare Abraham and Lot in literature, that's called a foil. I don't know why, it's just what it is. When you have two characters that are the exact opposite, playing the opposite roles. And you see them interacting with each other in a way that they're always going to show how the other one is an opposite. So we have that in the Lot story already. Last chapter, when they separated, Abram told him, you can take whatever you want. So Lot chooses the quote-unquote bad lands, or with the people with the bad people, okay? And Abram chooses the one that the people are nice to him. They already gave him a portion of land, right? That's why he's living by the oaks of Mamre. And so we have good and bad, we have passive, we have active, and we have impotent, and we have potent. That makes for a good story. That makes you want to read it more. And that's only in the 14th chapter of the Bible. After we've already done the flood narrative, the Tower of Babel narrative, the Cain and Abel narrative. Now that we're moving forward with the Abram narrative, we're going to see how Abram is kind of this really special guy, because he's going to do all of these really cool things, especially in this next section of this chapter, that doesn't happen to anybody else. Okay? So, we are halfway done with today. We've covered half of the chapter, okay? And we've covered the confusing part of the chapter. Does anybody have any comments or questions before we move on with the other confusing part of the chapter? Clear as mud? Did I ever tell you about that phrase? I had in college, you know, you have these adjunct professors, we call them run-a-profs, right? Because they just kind of come in for one semester and then they're gone. We had one for my diversity class, and literally every sentence she ended, clear as mud? And it was a 3-hour class on Mondays from 6 to 9. So I'm sitting and she's like, clear as mud? Clear as mud? Clear as mud? It's clear as mud! Leave us alone! Awful. Okay. So, okay, here we go. I'm going to read the whole thing. We might have to read it a couple times. That's okay. So, verses 17 through 24. After his return from the defeat of Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him, the king of Sodom went out to meet him at the valley of Sheba, that is the king's valley. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was priest of God Most High. And he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram by God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, for he has delivered your enemies into your hand. And Abram gave him 1/10 of everything. And the king of Sodom said to Abram, Give me the persons, but take the goods for yourself. But Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have lifted my hand to the Lord, God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, that I would not take a thread, or a sandal, or strap, or anything that is yours, lest you should say, I have made Abram rich. I will take nothing but what the young men have eaten, and the share of the men who went with me. Let Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre take their share. Great. Give me your comments or your questions. Well, so he's the king of Sodom, right? So he's allowed to give away, because technically he rules all of them, right?
He owns it all.
Yeah, he owns it all. So he is going to try to give him some stuff to thank him for getting all of his possessions back in the previous section. That sounds like a really nice thing to do. Abram decides that, no, that's not what I want, because I don't want to say that any man made me rich. I want to say that God made me rich. Good. That sounds like a man after God's own heart. But what else is confusing with this?
Abraham's focus on God and not on himself.
Which is a very good attribute to have. One that maybe other people in the Bible don't necessarily have. However, we read in the last chapter, or no, chapter 12, that, you know, he gave his wife to the Pharaoh in Egypt, which is not necessarily something that we consider to be very godly.
No.
So, yes, he's following God. Yes, God is blessing him. Yes, Abram's making mistakes. So what are we supposed to make of this patriarch? Pardon? He's human. Yes, he's special, but yes, he's also not special. He's really in the same boat as you and me. God just chose him to create a nation, to make his name great. As we learn that you're not supposed to do in the Tower of Babel. Okay? All right, what else? Anything else confusing in this?
Well, Abraham says he has no offspring.
For what?
Oh, 9:15, is that the wrong place?
We're in chapter 14
I'm
still.
sorry.
Yeah, we'll do 15 next week. Yeah. 15 is a really cool chapter. One of the best.
So he's giving an option for the other three to take their share. You weren't already decided that I want anything,
Mm-hmm.
but these three can take their share.
Yeah, like you think about it like Abram's allies, okay? They are technically Canaanites, not part of the group, but they're Canaanites because they live in Canaan, okay? So they're natives to the land, and they may or may not believe in God. Probably, I would argue they don't. But they get along with Abram. They kick it together. So they went after him because they're allies with him.
So he's not forcing his view or his there. He's saying, this is my belief.
This is for
on
me. Right.
So I'm not gonna force that on them.
Yeah.
They came, they supported me.
They can do
so
what they
do
want.
on that.
You know? Which is, you would say, pretty modern.
It would be modern, but also keep them as allies. Because if he didn't want anything, but I'm sure they're looking at.
They probably did. I mean, that's a lot of work. Go up as far as Damascus. Come on.
And only-
You should get something for their time.
Yep. So it would keep them as a good ally as
Yeah.
far as that goes.
Good. What else? There's a lot in this section that we need to talk about yet. I'm gonna give you a hint. There's another foil. Alright. I'm gonna erase this just because I already drew over it, but I'm gonna draw another map of the same thing. Okay? So, Israel, how did you draw Israel? Big J, little circle, squiggly line, bigger oval. Okay? So, this is what we got. We have Sodom, which is somewhere over here on this side, probably further north. So we have Sodom right here. And we have this guy that comes out to meet him named Melchizedek. And Melchizedek is the king of what? Salem. Where is Salem? I don't think it's going to be on your map. I would be surprised if they were. So, Salem is right here.
She's north of the Dead Sea.
Yeah. Okay, if I write this and you see Salem, that should make you think of another city in the Bible that you know very, very well. Let me give you another hint. Yeah. Oh, that's pretty cool. Okay. Salem comes from. Oops. Peace, which is really good. I'm glad that some of you knew that. Okay. So we have this peace word where the city was that they took from the people, and that's why Jeru is on the front. Okay? So we have this king called Melchizedek coming from the city that will later be called Jerusalem, which also shares the consonants of peace. What is this telling us? What can you infer from that?
You're gonna build a nation?
Well, okay, so this is going to be part of the blessing of Abram, because what does Melchizedek do? He literally blesses him. Which is like really awesome, right? So you have this king that represents peace coming to Abram and saying these words, "Blessed be Abram by God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand." That's a really cool blessing. It's the first time that that's happened so far in the Bible. That someone has come up to a man of God and blessed them.
And he's also a man of God.
And he's also a man of God. What does that mean? You knew I was going to ask that question.
Yes.
You almost didn't want to say anything. Okay, so this guy, this Melchizedek, is also described, how does the Bible describe him?
Priest of God Most High.
He's a priest of God Most High. What is going on here? How does this make sense?
We didn't know a congregation was created.
No. So in order to have a priest, you have to have a congregation, right? You gotta have a temple, gotta have a church, gotta have something, right? So there's something in the city of Salem who is also a king. And if we added one more in here, what would it be? Normally, if you're blessing someone in the Old Testament, you are also a prophet, right? These three things are supposed to make you think of, oh, come on, people. You're better Lutherans than that. What? Jesus! Jesus represents the ultimate prophet, the ultimate priest, and the ultimate king. Now, it was very interesting to me in seminary because I had a professor ask, okay, prophet, priest, and king, go find it in the Bible. Because, you know, like, we all have heard from pastors, right? Jesus is our prophet, he's our priest, he's our king. Okay, so go find it in the Bible. Find the verse in the Bible where it says Jesus is our prophet and priest and king. It's not there. There is not a verse that says that, but all of us know that. So why do we all know that? Because there are portions of the New Testament where Jesus acts as our priest. There are portions where he represents our king. And there are portions that he acts like a prophet. So is Jesus all these three things? Yes. Is he going to come across in a verse as prophet, priest, and king? No. Is that a problem?
No.
It shouldn't be.
The results of the earth was.
The results are the same. Okay? So here we have this guy from Jerusalem who it represents 2 out of the 3 things that Jesus does, coming out to bless this man of God who is also a man of God. This is weird.
We believe now that he's more man of God than he is.
Well, okay, yeah, well, who's a better Christian, right? I don't know. But it's there, right? We have a man of God blessing the man of God. Why is this man of God bless him and not the other way around? Why doesn't Abram bless him when he's gotten the specific blessing from God? I don't know. These are questions that I can't answer. But for some of us who brought our full Bibles, anybody?
Yeah.
We're going to look up Hebrews chapter 7. Hebrews chapter 7.
Who's going to be this one?
Hebrews comes after the books that Paul wrote. Okay, so Hebrews is one of my favorite books of the Bible because it connects a lot of the Old Testament in ways that we wouldn't necessarily think of otherwise. So Hebrews chapter 7, I'm going to read it to you. For this Melchizedek, well, here, I'll start at verse 6. Where Jesus has gone as a forerunner on our behalf, having become a high priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. For this Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of the Most High God, met Abraham returning from the slaughter of the kings and blessed him. And to him Abraham apportioned 1/10 of everything. He is the first by translation of his name, King of Righteousness. That's what Melchizedek means, King of Righteousness. And he is also King of Salem, that is King of Peace. He is without father or mother or genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but resembling the Son of God, he continues a priest forever. See how great this man was, to whom Abraham the patriarch gave 1/10 of the spoils. And those descendants of Levi who received the priestly office have a commandment in the law to make tithes from the people, that is, from their brothers, though these also are descendants of Abraham. But this man who does not have his descent from them received tithes from Abraham and blessed him who had the promises. It is beyond dispute that the inferior is blessed by the superior. In the one case, tithes are received by mortal man, but in the other case, by one of whom it is testified that he lives. One might even say that Levi himself, who receives tithes, paid tithes through Abraham, for he was still in the loins of his ancestor when Melchizedek met him. Now, if perfection had been attainable through the Levitical priesthood, for under it the people received the law, what further need would there have been for another priest to arise after the order of Melchizedek, rather than one named after the order of Aaron? For when there is a change in the priesthood, there is necessarily a change in the law as well. For the one whom these things are spoken belonged to another tribe, from which no one has ever served at the altar. For it is evident that our Lord was descended from Judah, and in connection with the tribe of Moses said nothing about priests. This becomes even more evident when another priest arises in the likeness of Melchizedek, who has become a priest, not on the basis of legal requirement concerning bodily descent, but by the power of the indestructible life. For it is written of him, "You are a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek." For on the one hand, a former commandment is set aside because of its weakness and uselessness, for the law made nothing perfect. But on the other hand, a better hope is introduced, through which we draw near to God. And it is not without an oath. For those who formerly became priests were made such without an oath, but this one was made a priest with an oath by the one who said to him, "The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever." This makes Jesus the guarantor. What's that word?
Guarantor.
What?
Guarantor.
Guarantor. Sure. Of a better covenant. I hate English. The former priests were many in number because they are prevented by death from continuing in office, but he holds his priesthood permanently because he continues forever. Consequently, he is able to save to the uttermost those who draw near to God through him, since he always lives to make intercession for them. For it was indeed fitting that we should have such high priest, holy, innocent, unstained, separated from sinners, and exalted above the heavens. He has no need, like those high priests, to offer sacrifices daily, first for his own sins and then for the sins of the people, since he did this once for all when he offered up himself. For the law appoints men in their weakness as high priests, but the word of an oath, which came later than the law, appoints a son who has been made perfect forever. Wow.
Wow.
Okay? So what, in other words, what is Hebrews saying about Melchizedek?
He's comparing Melchizedek to Jesus, compare and contrast.
He's comparing and contrasting Melchizedek to Jesus, which I hope I was able to make clear before, but the author of Hebrews goes like 5 steps further than I do. Okay? So what are we supposed to make out of that? Hebrews says that Melchizedek does not have a father or a mother. What does that, what? That makes no sense.
He was sent down by God.
He was sent down by God as an angel, or sent down by God something out. We have no idea. What I'm saying is, when you think about all of this stuff, you have to, this is the only conclusion that you can rationally make. Okay? Melchizedek was special. Really special. He says he doesn't die. Did Melchizedek die? Maybe. I mean, like, people die. Doesn't say that Melchizedek was God. Another way that you can interpret this is if Melchizedek didn't die and has no father and mother, then Melchizedek himself would have been the second person of the Holy Trinity. Which should make you go, whoa, that's a big step, okay? The way that Hebrews describes it, you can make that argument. You don't necessarily get that from Genesis. You have to know a little bit more about the Hebrew to make it that far, but the author of Hebrews interprets it like that. That Jesus came in the order of Melchizedek, in the way that he had no father or mother, that he just was, and was blessed by God.
That's a big.
Yeah, so
That's a big, yeah, it should be. I hope it is. Right? Where you're just like, I don't even know what happened. Like this is crazy. Right? It's crazy cool, and it's crazy awesome that God does this.
But you can't overlook it.
But you can't just skip by this and say, oh yeah, that was cool, he was blessed by a king, awesome. It's not that. And when we read Genesis, sometimes I think we kind of like, oh, great, okay, like this thing happened, and then we move on because we don't have any questions. But we have to know what we're talking about in order to really understand what's going on here. Okay? So, was Abram human? Yes. Was Abram special? Yes. He was blessed by this really cool king, Salem, which, if you foil that in this story, we have Salem, which is peace, and we have the other king of Sodom, which is trying to give possessions away. So the king of Salem is blessing him, and the king of Sodom is blessing him by trying to give him stuff. And Abram's like, I don't want your stuff. I got God. What else? What else? Like, that's not going to help me. He's the one that's going to give me all the herds and all of the stuff. I'm going to plunder the Egyptians by going down and giving them my wife. Which is so weird. Okay? Genesis is a really weird book. There's a lot of things in here where we're like, wow, I think I got that, but like maybe I don't. And maybe I should reread that again. And we're like the next chapter, and then chapter 17, even chapter 16 with Sarah and Hagar, you're like, what, why? Like, it could be so much easier than this, and it's just not. Okay? So, I really like starting to read the Bible with Genesis, because it's the first book of the Bible, but also, like, this stuff is hyper interesting. At least in my opinion. You're allowed to disagree with me.
No, I thought that was a wow.
Yeah. Okay? So, now that we read Hebrews 7, you can also look up Psalm 110. Psalm 110 mentions Melchizedek as well. Okay?
Did you say Hebrews 7?
7. Hebrews chapter 7. You can read that. Compare and contrast, make some notes, talk about it later. This is what Christians do, right? Read the Bible and we talk about it.
It seems like, Melchizedek, that's not a common name that we refer to in the Bible. We think of Abram, Isaac, Jacob, the key names. And this one is a lesser unknown one, but it's not.
It's just as powerful.
Yeah.
It's just as powerful, if not more powerful. Yeah. And I think it just really helps to know the Hebrew, right? Melchizedek means king of righteousness. Who is Jesus? Literally the king of righteousness. Like that's a pretty strong connection, right? The king of righteousness is coming from the city of peace. That's kind of what Christmas is all about, right? We talk about peace most often at Christmas. So those are really strong connections that may not seem super obvious if you don't know the meaning of Salem. Coming from Jerusalem, right? Melchizedek, Psalm 110. Okay? Comments, questions, concerns? We got 2 more minutes. Weather report, sports scores. Anything else? Yes.
What era does today's talk happen in, year-wise? How far before Jesus was born?
Oh, that's a very good question. That is also a very loaded question. I try not to answer it because it is such a loaded question. If you go the traditional biblical route, which is what most traditional Christians want, this is going to be between 6 and 5,000 BC. for its most.
What was the question?
When did this happen according to our modern way of telling time? Is that correct?
Yeah.
If you ask any scholar, they will probably not give you that answer.
What kind of answer would they give?
Either way before or way after that. Depending on how old you think the earth is, which is a whole nother Genesis question. Which depends on whether or not you care about whether carbon dating is actually accurate or not, which is a whole nother thing. Okay? So, okay, is that good? Good? Okay. Anything else? Is there more that you want to do with this chapter? Is it okay if we move on to chapter 15 next week?
Good.
Yes? That was enough names for today? Okay. So next week is chapter 15. Chapter 12 is kind of like we talked about in chapter 12, how chapter 12 kind of changes the direction of the story, right? In the first 11 chapters, we had the prehistory with the flood and the Tower of Babel, things that we weren't necessarily able to say this is exactly where it happened kind of thing. Chapter 12, we're starting to see some more of these cities on our maps and such. Chapter 15 is going to take the story and it's going to catapult it to another level. Okay? It's actually really, really interesting. It's one of my favorite chapters to teach. 16 it's just a weird chapter with Sarah and Hagar and the way that the interactions happen. And then all of a sudden, chapter 17 is another one of the best chapters to read. It really explains a lot about God's relationship with Abraham. And so we kind of get this, what I consider to be like a roller coaster ride through Genesis, okay? High point with 12, low point with 13, because Lot decides that he wants to go off and live with the evil people. And then we have 14, which is kind of weird, doesn't really know where to place it. 15 is a high point, 16 low, 17 high, 18 low, 19 high, if you want to describe Sodom and Gomorrah as a high. And then then Abraham's gonna die and we're gonna get, move on to Isaac, okay? So we're kind of going up and down for the next couple of weeks on what's good, what's bad, and what's ugly. Because I saw one person snicker. I made the movie joke, right? Okay, good. All right. Well, let's close with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. All right. Please come back next week.